Welcome to the Bloody Aussie Battler podcast with your host and fellow battler, Mike Holt. The Bloody Aussie Battler brings you news, views and interviews as we discuss what the liars, thieves, criminals and traitors have been doing to our country and to Western democracies around the world. My guests discuss important issues and explain why and how it's time to drain the billabong to bring back decent, lawful, moral government that will serve we, the people of the Commonwealth of Australia. Join us now on the Bloody Aussie Battler.
Are you interested in podcasts that uncover the truth? Tune into Widdershins Podcast. Straight from science fiction, we uncover the technologies being developed right under our noses. We bring to you the world's leading scientists, engineers and experts to discover just how far away these things really are from becoming our reality. www.widdershinspodcast.com.
Dick Yardley's book, Australian Political and Religious Leaders, Treason, Treachery and Sabotage. Dick exposes how Whitlam, Hawke, Keating, Goss, Rudd and all the other Fabians have destroyed our manufacturing and agriculture. If you want to know exactly how they have done it, get Dick's book at advanceaustralia.com.au and click on merchandise. Knowledge is power. Get the power to fight the corruption today. G'day. I would say this is going to be the most important series of videos I've ever recorded. Now, before I go any further, if you haven't read our Constitution, which is still alive and well, but ignored by the political party traitors, go to our website and download your copy here. Make sure you read it. You'll find that it is written in surprisingly clear English. Everyone can understand it. And as we learn where our wealth has gone, we'll include information about how our Constitution works to protect our rights and freedoms. But let's start at the beginning of our current troubles. And even though the rot set in many decades ago, there's no need for us to go that far back to see how crafty the politicians have been and how badly they have been fooling us. So in 1973, Prime Minister Gough Whitlam removed the People's Queen, Elizabeth II, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of her other realms and territories. This was a direct attack on the Crown, and Whitlam was guilty of high treason. Unfortunately, most Australians at the time were so unaware of how our political system works that they did not realise the extent of Whitlam's crime and how it would impact on us so badly even today. As a result of Whitlam's treason, and then Bob Hawke trying to create a de facto republic without the approval of the Australian people voting in a referendum in his Australia Act, we have not had a lawful government ever since. In truth, today we are ruled by a criminal gang far more ruthless, dangerous and rapacious than any mafia mob. Now, if you read our Constitution, this is where it establishes we, the people of Australia, as the ultimate power. And it says, whereas the people of New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, Queensland and Tasmania, humbly relying on the blessing of Almighty God, have agreed to unite in one indissoluble federal commonwealth, under the Crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, and under the Constitution hereby established. So it establishes we the people as the Federation of Australia, not the political parties. So by taking the Queen out of our Constitution, Gough Whitlam removed all Crown authority from the Parliament and the courts. In effect, he ensured that all laws passed by any government since 1973 are not valid. They do not have the authority of the Crown behind them. So how can they? When there is no Crown authority anymore, he took her out. Now, to understand how badly the political parties have robbed us, we need to understand how they have been able to enforce almost total control over our lives. Now, each time we vote in an election, the candidates make wonderful promises. But once elected, it's as if they have contracted Alzheimer's. They forget all the promises to us and set about towing the party line instead. And this is the problem with the current political system. The party politicians are only accountable to their party, not to us. And the party line is dictated by their real masters, the international banking system and the United Nations. We have absolutely no say in their discussions and decisions. As a result, we have seen our nation go from a rich and powerful country to a weak, poor one, with no ability to defend ourselves from invasion, or even to stop the rape of our valuable water, land, and minerals. We have been massively betrayed. So what has happened? And if we are to recover, does Australia have enough wealth left to recover? So we at Advance Australia have done our research, and I want to thank our chief researcher, Lee, for all the marvellous work she does. She has researched how wealthy Australia really is. The results shocked me, and I know that they will shock you. But hopefully, from now on, you will start asking,
where's the money?
In 2017, which is the last year we have numbers for, Australia's foreign debt topped $1 trillion. We and our children and their children and possibly their children will have to pay this off unless we come up with a solution. And that is what we plan to do at the end of this series. Yet we hardly ever hear anyone mention the staggeringly high debt or the implications it holds for our future. I think deep down inside, most of us know that we are deeply in debt, but we're just too damn scared to look at what it is and what we can do about it. Now, $1 trillion is equivalent to 60% of the nation's annual income, that is the gross domestic product today, whereas the federal net public debt is heading for less than a third of that, about 320 million. Now, those figures are from June 2017, the latest we have. Now, if the political party corporate government continues to create even more debt in the coming years, how are we ever going to get out of debt and get our national bottom line back in the black? Good question. But this question needs to be addressed by all Australians. The government is spending the wealth of our nation and of our children's children without providing ways for us to ever repay the many loans they have taken out. But there is some good news. The simple fact is the political parties have incurred this massive debt, not you and me. They have done it in our name. But as the government is in reality a corporation registered in the USA, they actually own the debt. We, the people of the Commonwealth, have never agreed to or even signed off on any of the loans. Technically, it is not our responsibility, but we can't take that attitude. If we're going to get our country back to constitutionally lawful government, as our founding fathers intended, then we are going to have to look at ways to repay this debt. Australia cannot be seen as a nation that refuses to pay its debts just because we have let a bunch of criminals and traitors incur the debt in our name. Now, we've looked at ways to do this, and we believe that we have come up with a solution. But we'll talk about that later on. Right now, though, we need to look at how we would do it and where will that wealth come from. The truth is, despite the worst efforts of the political parties, Australia is still a very, very wealthy country. The problem is that the political parties have not managed the wealth on behalf of the people. Instead, they have sold us out to the international banking system and the United Nations. Now, I'm going to ask you, does anyone recall ever agreeing to allow the United Nations to dictate our laws and the way our government is run. But unfortunately, that is the sad reality today. And why? Because in 1973, Whitlam signed the Unidroit Agreement, and I encourage you to go and have a look at that on Wikipedia. And he signed it ostensibly to unify our law with international standards, but we didn't need to do that. We already had our law. It's called English common law. But what's even worse is Whitlam had no authority to sign any agreements that would nullify our Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act 1901. He just could not do it, but he did it anyway. So by signing the Unidroit Agreement, Whitlam turned over control of our laws to a foreign entity based in Rome. Ever since then, our courts and the government have not operated according to the Constitution. Instead, they operate under Roman civil law, and this is why we can get no justice these days.
Know your rights, because those who don't know their rights have none.
Welcome back to Know Your Rights. Now today we're going to have a look at the Unidroit Treaty. Now the Unidroit Treaty, as you will discover on their website, which is www.unidroit.org, and we urge you to go to the membership page of that. But it's a fairly comprehensive website, and it goes into great detail about the articles that Unidroit covers. But essentially, it is an intergovernmental committee that is established in each of the member nations or states, and they play a heavy role in the drafting of legislation in that particular nation or state. Now, for the purpose of Australia, how does that impact on us? Well, Australia signed up to that in specifically on the 20th of March 1973, and it was through the Attorney General's Department. Now, the law that we've inherited here, specifically the Bill of Rights 1688, clearly forbids that treaty and any part of our government being a part of a treaty that is signed over with the Holy See. And that was the group that essentially started off the Unidroit Treaty. It's run from Rome and through the Holy See and the Vatican, through the members of the Executive Council formed through Unidroit. They then dictate through that committee to each of the member officers. So here it's the Attorney General's Department, and the Attorney General, of course, is responsible for writing the law that the Parliament pass, and also to do with the policies that the Parliament deal with. So it's a treaty that is clearly forbidden by the law here in this country, and of course this goes for the same for any of the Commonwealth countries, Canada and many other, England as well. In Australia in 1973, England joined up in 1948, and I urge you to go to the membership to actually see where these countries and what officers specifically joined up, but it is against the law. It's beyond the power of any government department here in Australia to sign up to a treaty that is in breach of the inherited law. So it's very important that we get our heads around this Unidroit Treaty and we start asking questions of those in our Parliament, and specifically the Attorney General's Department. So you can go to your local member in your area and line up a meeting with the Attorney General, not only the Federal Attorney General but the Attorney General in each state, and ask them the question, where did you get the authority to sign this treaty, and take any references from that intergovernmental committee with respect to the drafting of any legislation, and what legislation specifically have Unidroit influenced here in Australia. So that's a very important job that we can all do. So get out there.
We, the people of the Commonwealth of Australia, were not informed of this treasonous move by Whitlam. So as a result, We have suffered under a foreign law system ever since that does not protect our rights or freedoms. And this is why we all need to stand united and refuse to elect any political party to Parliament ever again. So all you people that keep on saying, why don't we elect this party or that party, they'll fix the problems. No, they won't. They are all complicit in the crimes against us. Now remember too, that because we have a constitution under English common law, we have the law on our side, as the constitution states very clearly that only the people can select our parliamentary representatives. It doesn't mention political parties or even a prime minister. They simply cannot exist under our Commonwealth law. Now, the qualifications for choosing our senators and representatives are enshrined in section 16 and 24 of our Constitution, which states, the House of Representatives, and it's the same for the Senate, shall be composed of members directly chosen by the people of the Commonwealth. We need to elect a government of the people, by the people, for the people, that will work to help our nation recover from the damage the political parties have caused. Then we can start creating a healthy, wealthy, and happy nation. You know that we were once one of the richest nations in the world. That was back in the 1920s. Well, if we could do it then, we can do it again now. And we have many more riches to draw on than we had back then. All we had back then was the sheep's back. Our greatest wealth is in our land. Not just the land we grow food on, but also the hidden wealth below the surface. Australia is an extremely rich country, but until we have the power to manage it for ourselves, for the benefit of all Australians, we are losing that wealth to foreign interests. Now, Australia has a robust and world-leading mining industry, which is evidenced by Australia being in the top 5 position as a producer for some 17 commodities, including gold, bauxite, iron ore, rare earths, mineral sands, zinc, lead, and coal. Now, in 2017, Australia's mineral exports, excluding petroleum products, amounted to $179 billion. And that was just 59% of all export merchandise and only 46% of all exported goods and services. Now, in the same year, mining accounted for just 8.1% of gross domestic product. In addition, the mining industry employed some 220,000 people, with many more employed by related industries. In this and the following podcast, we are going to show you how wealthy Australia really is, how much wealth has been stolen from us without our knowledge, and finally, we will look at ways to create more wealth for everyone than we could ever dream of in the future. And it will be all based on our many resources. Did you know that Australia has gold all over the place? The Chinese found the first gold here in 1422 when they sent a fleet of junks to circumnavigate the country. Yeah, in 1422, even before Columbus discovered America. And they mined gold up in Gympie. Now, altogether, we actually have about 128 operational gold mines in Australia right now. But our 5 largest gold mines are Finiston, which is known as the Super Pit, which is what I'm sitting in front of here. It's in Kalgoorlie. We have another open pit in Boddington, over in Western Australia. We have Telfer up in the Pilbara. That's 2 open pit mines and 1 underground. We have Olympic Dam in South Australia, that's underground. And Cadia in Orange, New South Wales has an underground and an open pit. And this is the 2nd largest mine after Finiston. This map shows Australia's hidden wealth. Pretty amazing, isn't it? But let's zoom over to Kalgoorlie first of all and have a look at our largest open pit gold mine. Now, the earliest visual record we have of the mine is in 2004 on Google Earth. But mining in Kalgoorlie has been going on since 1893. Work in the huge pit that you see on your screen now began around the turn of the century. That is, around 1999 to 2000. Since then, the open pit has expanded to become the largest one in Australia, and it is expanding so much now that it is encroaching on the town. Looking at the 700-metre dip Kalgoorlie gold mine pit today, we can see how much gold has already been dug out, but there's still much more below ground. Reports from the source Geoscience Australia indicate that each mine is producing about $1 billion worth of gold a year. That's 1 billion multiplied by 5 just for the 5 biggest ones. And as part of Australia's official reserve assets, the Reserve Bank holds an amount of gold in reserve for us, including gold that is on loan. The RBA's holdings amount to about 80 tonnes, with the full value of these holdings recorded as an asset on the RBA's balance sheet. 80 tonnes? That's a drop in the bucket. The RBA's position in gold has not changed since 1997. Despite having so much gold in the ground, we're not leveraging it to create wealth for Australians by backing our currency with it. Now, the next question we need to answer is, where are the RBA's gold reserves? Well, Australia is the second leading producer of gold behind China, but we do not rank in the top 10 for gold reserves, as you can see in this diagram. In January 2020, the Reserve Bank had 73,303 million and 4,679 tonnes, which means that the BOE holds 4,632 tonnes at $72,567, while here in the Reserve Bank we hold just 46.8 tonnes. Almost the entirety of the RBA's physical gold holdings, that is 99.9%, are stored in the United Kingdom at the Bank of England. The Bank of England holds the RBA's gold as a bailee, that is, legal and beneficial title to the gold remains with the RBA, but a very small amount of gold is stored at the Reserve Bank's head office in Sydney. Now that might sound very good, but Australia does not own the RBA. It is owned by the international banking cartel. So does the RBA earn income from its gold? And more importantly, what benefit do the Australian people get from our gold? Gains or losses on the RBA's gold holdings mostly arise from changes in the spot value of gold. Gold holdings in a vault do not accrue interest. So to earn some ongoing income, the Reserve Bank may lend its gold. So for more than 30 years, the RBA has participated in the gold lending market, at times lending almost all of its gold holdings. And in the last decade, the RBA's gold lending activity has slowed down. A reduction in gold producers' hedging demands, combined with greater willingness of other investors to lend their gold, has lowered the returns available from gold lending. So we're not even making much money off our gold right now. What is our gold worth today then? Obviously, we've had to make some very general calculations here, but with the gold price currently hovering around 1,500 or higher, I heard the other day that it was about 2,500 or something per ounce, we can calculate how much the gold that has been dug up since 2004 is worth. But don't forget that we have massive reserves of gold still untouched in the ground. We hold about 80 tonnes. That's 2,821,917 ounces of gold. So if we calculate at even the lowest price of 1,500, we estimate that our current gold holdings are worth around $4,232,875,500. So why is the government always crying poor and wanting more of our money?
Where's the money?
I hope this has helped you to see that Australia does not need to be in debt, and we need to have control of our own resources. Just taking control of our gold mines alone would allow us to virtually pay off that debt in one day. Why aren't we doing it? Because the political parties are not managing this country for you and me. Anyway, that will do for now. I'll be back soon, and we'll be looking at coal next. I know this is a controversial subject, but we have a lot of coal. Why aren't we using it to our best benefit? And I'll explain more about that in our next video. Thank you all. See you next time.
In 1975, Australians agreed to destroy our economy so that it fitted into a new economic order, the New World Order. The Second General Conference of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, met in Lima, Peru from 12 March to the 26th of March 1975. The outcome of that meeting was the Lima Declaration, a blueprint for the transfer of technology, tools and jobs to third world or developing nations, leaving the developed nations such as Australia short of technology, tools and jobs. This is now a reality with around 90% of our agriculture and manufacturing jobs gone. The result, yet another third world in the making. So, what is the Lima Declaration? How does it affect you and your family? Its correct title is Lima Declaration and Plan of Action on Industrial Development and Cooperation. It is an international trade agreement similar to GATT, the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. Australia is a signatory to the Lima Declaration, as it is to many GATT agreements. Australia signed the Lima Agreement with the total support of all major political parties. Whitlam, Fraser, Hawke, Keating, Hewson, Howard, Rudd, the Democrats, the Greens, and the Nationals all subscribe to this type of economic genocide, albeit under different names: North-South Dialogue, GATT, Internationalism, Interdependence, International Monetary Fund, the IMF, World Bank, or the New World Order. All different names for the same plan of control of the world through the money system. Control by sick minds, treasonous politicians, and bumbling academics and bureaucrats. It should be clearly understood that the Lima Declaration is one of many hundreds of international agreements and treaties signed by Australia, usually by one man, the Minister for Foreign Affairs or his nominee, who signs on behalf of all Australians. In 1975, that man was Senator Don Willacy. It should be clearly understood that 99% of Australians do not know what such agreements and treaties are about, nor how they affect their lives, and they are not told deliberately, because if they were, there would be riots in the streets. This video deals very briefly with just one of hundreds of agreements and treaties between the UN and Australia, the United Nations Lima Declaration of 1975. International treaties in the main are the handiwork of the United Nations and have been used by Australian governments to undermine Australian sovereignty. The High Court decision on the Franklin Dam issue in Tasmania is a case in point, used to put in place processes the impact of which the Australian people are completely unaware, and if they were aware, would be totally opposed to processes that get around the Australian Commonwealth Constitution. In other words, treason. And treason is being committed in the name of international treaty, or the other names given to them such as conventions, or in this case declaration, the Lima Declaration. You may say treason is a strong word, but after viewing this video, you will say it is not strong enough, without doubt sufficient reason to impeach the Australian government and opposition on charges of treason. So, how did our governments give effect to the Lima Declaration? Simply, the Lima Declaration is an agreement to wind down Australian manufacturing by around 30% and to import that amount from other preferred countries together with as much primary produce as we can consume, such as fruit, meat, etc. The 30% was a target that is now blown out. Current estimates are that 90% of our production capacity is gone and our jobs with it. There is no mention in the agreement about what will happen to Australians who lose their jobs, their factories or their farms. It appears they are expendable. How can a government wind down business activity? Simply by making an unlevel playing field. Increase taxes, interest rates, the cost of employing people, without the worker gaining any benefit of course, environmental planning and controls, all of these things in combination either destroy or decrease our ability to produce. A good example would be, if you wish to manufacture widgets in Sydney, you may require, say, 5 acres of industrial land at around $12 million, on which you will pay $25,000 a year rates and $25,000 land tax. It will cost some hundreds of thousands in contributions to council coffers and environmental studies, all of which you may borrow at high interest. Then, if you are lucky, you will be up and manufacturing in maybe 2 to 5 years. Then the unions will step in and cause loss of production. The government will make you subject to time-consuming unnecessary costs, paperwork, insurance and payroll tax, and force you to collect sales tax on your product, and threaten you with heavy penalties including jail sentences for non-compliance. Or, You can simply set up business offshore and export your ideas back to Australia. Our offshore neighbour, also a party to the Lima Declaration, will give you the land, assist you in every way and not tax you for the first 5 years. Their interest may range from 0 to 4%, not to mention the Australian government's incentives available to importers from preferred countries. And so the playing field is drastically tilted to get the result required by a combination of government and financial activities. So, how does the Lima Declaration affect you? Simple. 50% of the productive Australian workforce becomes unemployed. Taxes on the remaining people employed increase to pay for the unemployed. With new shortage of income, you are forced to buy cheaper imports or go without, thereby aggravating the spiral of well-planned economic transfer equals oppression. Government will increase their numbers to cover up the real unemployment statistics and/or change the definition of unemployed. If you work 10 hours a month, you'll be considered employed. We now have more people in government at all levels with little to do, other than think up ways of controlling those who are left to produce what little we don't import, thinking up new revenue raising schemes and raising penalties to ensure their salaries. And last but not least, the obscure reason behind the Lima Declaration. Australia becomes a dependent nation, dependent on other nations for shoes, its machinery, its food, its survival. There is no doubt that within the grand plan of international control, there is no room for self-sufficient nations. Any nation that has all the material it needs and can grow all the food and fibre it needs cannot be totally controlled by any international body such as the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, or the World Bank. An independent nation, independent in its production of all the things it needs, cannot be bought to heel by sanctions, such as happened in South Africa and Iraq. The international monetary control cannot starve the infants of an independent nation, nor deny them medication, as they did in Iraq. If Australia cannot make its own shoes, clothes and machinery, then others will control us. That is the real purpose of the Lima Declaration, and that is why those who support the Lima Declaration, including those in influential positions, are all traitors.
If you're enjoying the Bloody Aussie Battler podcast, please consider donating to help keep us going. You can donate just once or make it a monthly donation. Any amount is welcome. To donate, go to our website at www.thebloodyausiebattler.com and click on Donate.